So like I said, we're getting into printing, and you're pretty much already there. So as a recap, just real quick, what we did first is we did page setup manager. We went to modify, and we set up all this information. You guys are used to that now because you've done it for like 6 to 8 sheets on the previous project. You just learned how to do it for a different size sheet on this project. But what you need to be aware of is, and some of you have encountered this already, is when you right click on the tab and you go to plot instead of page setup manager, the same window pops up, but there's a difference. When you go to plot, any modification you make to those settings only applies to that plot. And then when you go back to your file and you try to print again, it'll go back to whatever your page setup is set up to print. So because I set this up correctly, when I go to preview, this is what I get. And then when I go to print it, all I have to do is go to plot like this. So I set mine up to be a PDF, right? So I remember when we set up the actual printer, I did Adobe PDF. That is essentially the same thing as printing to an actual physical printer, except it just saves a digital file rather than printing it through, through the printer. So as a general rule of thumb, guys, for all of you in almost all conditions, you never want to print directly from the file that you're creating things on. You always want to print a PDF. And there are some instances where that's not necessarily true, but I'll say it'll take you years probably before you get to a point where you're going to start doing that. So go ahead and go to plot, and as long as your settings are set up correctly, I canceled that one, but go to plot, ensure that your settings are correct, and then you can go to preview, or you can just hit plot. But once you're in preview, if you want to print it, you right click and you just hit plot. Brings you to this window, you go to save it. So I'm going to put it in my drive here. It was fall 15, or there we go. And you can name it whatever you want. Layout 1 for whatever your file name is fine. And this is what you're going to get. It's going to create the file just like this. And then it should pop up on screen. There we go. Ugh. So a whole bunch of windows actually popped up like that. That's pretty terrible. I can't stand whatever version of Adobe we have on here. But for all intents and purposes, this is what I have. Okay, so I have a digital file that has all of my line work on top of it, and it's flat. Now I can no longer, if I click around in space, I can no longer select anything. So there's no difference between this and a drawing like this, except for the fact that one is digital and one is physical. So at that point, to actually print it, you click on the little print button up here, or you can go to File Print. And just take a quick look at what options you have here. Okay, you've got 8.5 or just 8 by 11. That is an 8.5 by 11. It's not an 8 by 11. And 11 by 17. And then you have what's called bond plotter and glossy plotter. The bond and glossy plotter are for large format, and it'll charge you out the wazoo to print something very, very small on those plotters. So don't make the mistake of printing there until you need to. So for us, this particular file is 11 by 17. If you are doing your test print on your other file, you should print to the 8 by 11. So I'm going to select 11 by 17 like this, and because it's only one sheet, I don't have to worry too much about it. If you guys have, or if you are printing from the previous file where there are multiple pages, then you would need to click this button here and pick which page you want to print. Okay, so we're all going to do a test print here. But I don't want you guys to print your whole set. So absolutely, absolutely make sure that you click on pages and pick one particular page to print. Okay, so the preview here is generally speaking very accurate. However, what you should be aware of is that when you click on fit, or shrink oversized pages, see here that the scale says 97%. And that's because when I sized my PDF file is exactly 11 by 17. And the printer's printable area is usually slightly less than that. So it'll be, 10 and 7/8 of an inch by like 16 and 5/8 or something like that. So it scales it down a little bit to fit into that printable area. So what you want to do, and the reason I gave myself a 1/2 inch border around the whole thing, is put it on a custom scale and leave it at 100%. So that means my drawing will be exactly the size that I want it to be. And at that point, it'll auto set up for portrait or landscape usually. For our purposes, we won't have to worry about that here. And then you hit print and it's good to go. So I'm going to hit print here. I'll release you guys to do a test print here in a second after we view this and I show you the print room. But so I'm going to send this right now, and it'll just kind of register like this and give you a little pop-up in the bottom right corner. It should anyway. And then it'll send it to the print room right over here. So I'm going to take you guys over there in just a second, but there it is. There's a little pop-up. Are there any questions about that so far? And was that a brand new process to anyone? It's okay if it was, huh? Okay, so I'll stop here. I'll bring you guys over there. I'll show you the printers, and then I want to release you to do a test print so that you guys can get used to what that looks like.